Graphs. I like graphs. They're a great way to visualize information, and with being stuck in at home at the moment, not being able to go out except for the most essentials, what better way to spend time but to look at some of the relevant data on the current virus crisis and interpret it in graphs. So I'm going to do a very simple introduction, and perhaps it'll give you an impetus to have a play with numbers and try and do some graphs and make some pretty graphs yourselves. Okay, so to begin to start drawing a graph, what you need is some data, and I'll show you three of the sources of data that I use to help me with getting information about the coronavirus at present. The first one is the UK government website, and they have a special one, and if you search for number of coronaviruses in brackets COVID-19 cases and risk in the UK, you should be able to find the page. And further down on the page they give daily information on the number of cases. Similarly, in the US there is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and they update their pages daily except at weekends, and I'll come back to that later, and they also give the number of COVID cases that they've seen, and it relates again to the day before. That's where the information was taken from. Now, a great summary of the information is presented by the World Health Organization in their situation reports, and they've done 63, having started back in January, and done one every day since. And if you open one of those reports, on the right hand side it gives you a summary of the world situation and then of individual regions. It gives you figures for the number of cases that have been confirmed and the number of deaths. And if you go down further beyond the map, they actually present this in a table form. The only nuisance is I haven't found a decent way to actually copy just individual columns of this data, so I've been copying it by hand. But anyway, once you have the data, what you can then do is you can start entering it into a spreadsheet. Now, I use Excel, but you can also use Open Office or Libre Office, which has got a program called Sheets within it, and they are totally free. And if you're using a laptop or a tablet, you should be able to get software that allows you to do this as well. I think Google also does something online which you can use. Now, having got this data, where I've got the date recorded from the 21st of February onwards, with all the UK figures, starting at 9 cases back at the 21st, through to 6,650 cases on the 23rd of March. I'd like to convert that into a chart. So I'll highlight the data. If I go to Insert, I can then insert a chart, and I can get a whole variety of different charts. So I can do things as a pie chart, for example. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. Gives you the number of cases over dates. It's not really an appropriate form, but you can change the charts type, and the chart type I refer is actually this line with markers. So here's my graph showing cases recorded in the UK starting on the 21st of February and adding all the new cases until you get the total number of cases to date, which is the 6,650. Now, you might want to express the data differently, so I'm looking at total number of cases up to a particular date. What you could look at is the number of cases that occur or that are recorded every day, and this is a chart that reflects that number. But it's up to you. It's whatever is best for you. Now, what I'd like to go on and do is look at some other charts and talk you through about what information the chart can actually give you and how it might be useful. Now the next thing we can do is compare the UK to some other countries like Italy, South Korea and the USA. And I've already prepared the data here for Italy, South Korea and the USA. And what you can do is you can plot another chart just highlighting all the data. Going to Insert, click on Line, and I'm choosing Line with Markers, and hey presto, we have another chart. I'll just expand it a bit. Now you can either have this chart next to the data, or you can have it in its own little sheet within Excel. And the way I do that is to right click, and I get the option Move Chart, and I create a new chart called Comparisons, for example. And so here it is, Comparisons at the bottom. You can see here Comparisons is now in its own little sheet away from the data. And then if you go to Layout, what you can do is you can add a title, you can add legends to either of these axes. Now I've already done this elsewhere, and here you can see the curves for the selected countries that I've got. When we looked at the UK curve before, which is now coloured green on this one, it took up the whole chart, remember? But now, because we've got Italy, and they have so many cases, they had over 60,000 cases, or nearly 60,000 cases, our 6,000 cases are only a tenth of that, so our curve is a lot flatter. The other interesting thing that you can see is the red curve here with the squares, and that's South Korea, and that increases like the UK and like Italy initially, but then it flattens off and goes into almost a straight line, and that's because South Korea has managed to get quite a bit of control on the disease, and it's not multiplying as much in the population as it is in Italy. And then you have the United States curve, and that's interesting because they started quite late with their counting, and you can see there are little bumps in here and even a levelling off before dashing up to another figure. And that's because they don't measure their virus counts or don't display them online at the weekends. So these little X's here are for the data from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's only on Monday that I had some fresh data that I could use. When you've got such a spread of information, it can be difficult to compare something that has got a few cases with something that's got very many cases. Now one way to do that is to change this axis, this vertical axis. At the moment it's going up, can you see, linearly 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. What if we go up 10 times each time? So let's have a go at that, and I'll show you how to do that. I right click on the axis and then go to Format Axis with a left click, and there is an option amongst all these complicated things to have a logarithmic scale. And if I tick that, it's giving me a logarithmic scale to the base 10. What's more important is that that gives me counts from just 1 to 10, from 10 to 100, from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 10,000, from 10,000 to 100,000. And it's where before we had a curve where things increased quite rapidly. You can see that the UK line is now more almost a straight line. You can see again the sharp rise in Italy is now actually a line that starts sharply and is beginning to sort of gradually smooth over. And the line for the Republic of Korea again shows a rapid increase and then it straightens out as they don't have very many new cases. The US line is higgledy-piggledy as it was before. In a log plot, what is important is actually the gradient. So if you try to draw a line from the beginning of round about here to the end of the UK line, and you compared it to a line that was straight between, say, this point in Italy and that point there, you can see there are slight differences. The steeper the line, the higher the angle, the faster the virus is multiplying in the population. So in fact, Italy started off multiplying quite rapidly, and it has slowed down a bit, even though the virus is still growing day by day in the population in quite large numbers. And the line for the UK seems to indicate that the virus is growing faster in our population at the moment than it was originally in Italy. But what we're all hoping to see is that we have a curve like the Republic of Korea, so that over time, as the control measures, as the lockdown starts taking an effect, the virus can't reproduce in the population, and we reduce the number of new cases, and the total number of cases in any country then just sort of tails off. So there you go. There's different ways to see charts. You can either have them with a linear axis, or you can have them with a logarithmic axis, depending on how you want to show the data. And whichever chart you use, what we're looking for is actually, for the UK, a chart where we find that cases in the UK are tailing off, and similarly for the US and for Italy, they too are looking for that turn in the curve to flatten and to show that there are no more cases and that they've got the disease under control. And that's why I like looking at charts and find them very useful. So why not have a go finding some data, whether it's about the virus or whether it's about other things, and trying to play around making some of your own charts. I'm sure you can make them better and even prettier than I have as well. Try and make them simple so that you can explain something that is actually happening at the time to someone else in pictures. With the coronavirus crisis, I've actually got a blog page where I summarize my findings every day. So from having a table of the symptoms through to looking at the information we have so far in terms of the coronavirus, how lethal it is, and then I have a whole range of different charts for a variety of countries. If you're interested, have a look. You'll find it under the Milton Contact -blog, and if you search for "Should I Worry About COVID-19, the Wuhan 2019 NCOV coronavirus," then you'll find it. Okay? Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and have fun with your own charts.